Last summer, I walked out to my garden on a Tuesday morning, and my rose bush looked like somebody had taken a hole punch to every single leaf. The stems were covered in shiny green beetles, just eating away like they owned the place. So I did what most of us do. I went to the hardware store, grabbed a bag of those yellow Japanese beetle traps, hung one right next to the bush, and figured that was that. By Thursday, I had 3 times as many beetles. I didn't know it then, but I had just made one of the most common and most expensive mistakes in American backyard gardening, and the solution I needed wasn't on any hardware store shelf. It was being used quietly for centuries on the other side of the world. Here's what I've come to understand after years of getting this wrong. There is no single spray, no single product, no magic bullet that permanently keeps pests out of your garden. Anyone selling you that idea is selling you a cycle, not a solution. But in Japan, traditional farming communities figured out something that most of us in the West are only just beginning to understand. You don't fight your garden's pests. You redesign the garden so the pests never gain a foothold in the first place. And once you understand why it works, you won't be able to look at a row of vegetables the same way again. For most American gardeners, pest control is reactive. Something shows up. You spray it. It comes back. You spray more. The bugs come back stronger because here's what that spray actually did. It killed the aphids. Yes, but it also killed the ladybugs, the parasitic wasps, the lacewings, all the creatures that were already working to control those aphids for free. Pest populations bounce back fast. Predator populations don't. So the next wave is bigger, and now you need a stronger chemical. Entomologists actually have a name for this. They call it the pesticide treadmill. You never get off. You just keep running. Japanese farming, particularly in communities shaped by an ancient land management philosophy called Satoyama, recognized this problem long before modern science named it. Satoyama, at its core, is about the border zone between wild mountain land and the farmable fields where villages grew their food. Japan is a mountainous country. Arable land has always been scarce. Farmers couldn't exhaust their soil and move on the way American settlers could push westward. They had to make every square foot work, season after season, for generations. So over centuries, they built intensely layered biodiverse systems where the forest, the fields, the streams, and the villages all worked together. And in that kind of environment, no single pest species ever gets to dominate. The ecosystem keeps itself in balance. One man in the 20th century took that same idea and codified it into something you could actually follow. His name was Masanobu Fukuoka. He was a plant pathologist in Japan, and in 1938, recovering from a serious illness, he had a realization that he said completely undid everything he had learned in his scientific training. He believed that human beings, in our drive to control and manage nature, were usually making things worse. Not just neutral, actually worse. He went back to his family's farm in Shikoku and spent 4 decades proving it. His method had 4 principles that look almost absurd when you first read them. No tilling, no synthetic fertilizers, no weeding, no pesticides. And his fields, year after year, matched or beat the yields of neighboring farms that were using expensive machinery and modern chemical inputs. He wrote it all down in a book called The One Straw Revolution. Farmers from the US to Europe to India still use it today. I want to be straight with you about one thing before we go further. Do-nothing farming does not mean ignore your garden. Fukuoka's method required intense daily observation and a precise understanding of how that specific piece of land behaved through every season. It just meant stop making interventions that do more damage than the problem you're trying to fix. That principle is exactly what every technique in this system is built on. When a pest outbreak happens, something is out of balance. You find the imbalance. You fix it. The outbreak goes away. The first layer of this system starts where most American gardeners never think to look. Not on the leaves. Not even above the soil. Underground. Traditional Japanese farming, and the systems that evolved from it, including a methodology called Korean natural farming and its successor, JADAM, all share the same starting point. A healthy plant is a pest-resistant plant. This isn't folklore. The science is solid. Plants grown in biologically active, compost-rich soil produce stronger cell walls and higher concentrations of natural defensive compounds. These compounds physically resist insect feeding. They make the plant tougher to eat and less nutritionally attractive to pests in the first place. One specific technique from Korean natural farming is called fermented plant juice, or FPJ. And the process sounds almost too simple to work. You harvest fast-growing weeds, something like mugwort, early in the morning. You mix that fresh plant material with an equal weight of dry brown sugar. The sugar draws the plant's own cellular fluids and microorganisms out through the cell walls, like the plant is juicing itself. After 7 days, you strain it, dilute it heavily, and spray it directly on your plants or drench the roots. Here's why it matters. A plant that is actively growing leaves needs completely different nutrients than that same plant when it is trying to set fruit. This idea that plants require stage-specific nutrition was documented by a Japanese horticulturist named Yasushi Inoue back in the 1930s. FPJ gives the plant growth stage hormones during the vegetative phase. When it shifts to flowering, you switch to a version made from ripe fruits instead, which delivers the sugars and enzymes the plant needs to reproduce. Supply what the plant actually needs at each stage, and it produces thicker cell walls, stronger stems, and compounds that pests find harder to feed on. You're not fortifying the garden against pests. You're fortifying the plant. The result is a plant that pests find genuinely harder to eat and less worth targeting. You haven't sprayed a single thing. The plant just got too tough to bother with. Now here's where the Japanese approach gets clever in a way that almost feels like cheating. Most insects don't find their target plants by sight. They find them by smell. Aphids, hornworms, cabbage loopers, cucumber beetles, they all navigate by following the volatile organic compounds that their preferred host plants release into the air. A long row of nothing but cabbages is basically a chemical signal broadcasting continuously. Here we are, come and get us. Japanese companion planting disrupts that signal at the source. Two plants in particular do this exceptionally well. The first is Negi Japanese bunching onion. You probably know its cousins. Green onions, scallions. Same family. And like anything in that family, it puts out powerful sulfur compounds when it grows. Those sulfur compounds overwhelm the pest's sense of smell. The signal the bug is tracking, the one pointing straight at your cabbages, gets buried in noise. Research on intercropped alliums shows measurable reductions in pest damage across multiple species. The pests can't find their target plants. The onion smell is covering the signal they're looking for. It's like trying to follow someone's cologne through a room full of burning garlic. The second plant is shiso, also called the beefsteak plant. It's a vigorously aromatic herb in the mint family, with a pungent, musky fragrance that deters aphids, spider mites, and whiteflies. Japanese gardeners plant it directly alongside tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants to mask those crops' scents. And as a bonus, its flowers attract parasitic wasps and hoverflies that hunt pests throughout the whole garden. One critical warning if you're in the United States. Shiso is classified as an invasive species by the USDA and several state invasive species councils. It self-seeds aggressively and can escape a backyard garden and spread into natural woodland spaces. If you use shiso, grow it exclusively in containers and cut the flowers off before they go to seed. Take that seriously. For the sulfur confusion layer, negi is the safer, more practical choice for most American home gardens. Plant it directly between your rows of brassicas, cabbage, kale, broccoli. Plant it near your nightshades. You are essentially hiding your vegetables inside a wall of chemical interference. Now, let me tell you about something that might be my favorite technique in this whole system, because it is so simple and so perfectly timed that it almost feels unfair. Japanese agriculturalists call it komomaki, a komo trap. In October, as temperatures drop, they wrap the trunks of their trees tightly with thick mats woven from straw. They just tie them on and leave them. Here's what happens next. As the season shifts toward winter, thousands of destructive insects, fall webworms, pine moths, and others descend from the tree canopy. They're looking for somewhere dark, insulated, and protected to survive the cold. And right there, wrapped around the trunk, is the perfect shelter. They crawl in and settle down for winter. At the beginning of spring, just before temperatures rise enough for those pests to break dormancy and emerge to reproduce, the mats are carefully removed and burned. That's it. No chemicals, no sprays, no climbing ladders in August trying to pick insects out of a canopy 30 feet above your head. You let the pest's own biology do the work. Field tests on street trees in Hakodate City in Japan showed that a single Como mat, made from materials costing about $1.10, captured an average of over 40 fall webworms in the summer season and over 27 in fall. For American homeowners dealing with cyclical fall webworm or spongy moth infestations, this translates directly. Wrap your susceptible trees, American sycamores, oaks with burlap or straw mats in October. In late February, before the spring thaw, remove them and dispose of them in sealed trash bags or burn them if local ordinances allow. You have just broken an entire generation of the pest's life cycle without touching a single chemical. There's one more tool in this system that I want to walk you through, because it might be the most versatile one. It's called mokusaku, wood vinegar. In some places, you'll see it sold under the name pyrrolinious acid, or liquid smoke. It's a natural byproduct of the charcoal making process. When wood is heated in a kiln without oxygen, the exhaust smoke is captured, cooled, and condensed into a dark, highly acidic liquid. That liquid contains over 200 distinct organic compounds, including acetic acid, methanol, and phenols. The way it deters pests operates on two levels at once, and both of them are fascinating. The first is evolutionary. Insects, birds, and mammals all share a deep biological instinct to flee from fire. When you spray a diluted solution of wood vinegar over your plants, the strong, smoky odor mimics the chemical indicators of an approaching forest fire. It triggers a flight response. Pests don't analyze it. They just leave. The second is chemical. The phenolic compounds in wood vinegar are potent natural fungicides. Studies have shown specific dilutions can halt the growth of Fusarium oxysporum, the pathogen responsible for Fusarium wilt in tomatoes and sweet potatoes. At higher concentrations, around 10%, wood vinegar achieves up to 80% mortality against fall armyworm larvae. The key is dilution. Wood vinegar is concentrated and acidic, and applying it without diluting it first will damage your plants. For general pest repellent, use a 1 to 500 dilution, 1 part wood vinegar to 500 parts water, applied as a foliar spray every 15 days. For vegetables and herbs, a 1 to 700 or 1 to 900 dilution works well, applied every 2 to 3 weeks. For soil sterilization before planting, a 1 to 50 or 1 to 100 dilution sprayed directly onto bare soil neutralizes pathogens before your seedlings go in. And for anyone worried about legality, the EPA has specifically classified vinegar containing up to 8% acetic acid as a minimum risk pesticide under FIFRA, Section 152.25. Wood vinegar falls under this exemption, which means you can use it legally on your home garden without any commercial registration process. Now let me bring this all the way home with the example I started with. The Japanese beetle. Here's something that makes the whole system click into place. The Japanese beetle is one of the most destructive pests in the United States. It decimates over 300 plant varieties here, but in Japan, where it originated, it is considered a minor nuisance. Not because Japanese farmers have some magic chemical, because in Japan, the beetle has a full ecosystem of natural predators, specific wasps, tachinid flies, that keep its population manageable. In the United States, introduced in New Jersey in 1916, it has almost none of those natural enemies, so the population explodes every summer. The standard American response is the pheromone trap, those yellow bag traps you hang near your roses. Here's what the research actually shows. Those traps attract far more beetles to your immediate area than they can possibly catch. The pheromones pull beetles in from a wide radius, and the ones that don't make it into the bag land directly on your plants. Multiple horticultural studies have confirmed this. If you have one of those traps hanging in your yard right now, the most effective thing you can do for your garden today is take it down. Here's what works instead. Early morning, when beetles are sluggish from the cold, knock them directly into a bucket of soapy water. The soap breaks the surface tension and they sink immediately before they can release stress pheromones that would attract more beetles to the area. Coat your vulnerable plants with a 1 to 500 dilution of wood vinegar. The smoky scent masks the sweet floral compounds the beetles are tracking, and interplant your roses and fruit trees with garlic, chives, or pungent onion family plants to create a localized olfactory barrier. You are not fighting the beetles. You are making your garden invisible to them. I want to talk about something I see go sideways every single time someone discovers companion planting for the first time. Companion planting is not magic. It is not a force field. A few marigolds next to your tomatoes will not automatically repel all pests in a 20-foot radius. In fact, university researchers studying Japanese beetles on roses found that certain aromatic herb combinations placed nearby actually attracted more beetles to the host plants in some test conditions. The volatile compounds drew the pests in without successfully deterring them. Modern science treats companion planting as a tool for pest reduction, not pest elimination. It works best when the specific volatile organic compounds of the companion plant are proven to interfere with how a target pest locates its host. Negi with brassicas, shiso with nightshades. Specific pairings for specific pests, not a universal spray and pray. And one more thing worth clearing up. Do-nothing farming. Fukuoka's term is genuinely one of the most misunderstood phrases in all of agriculture. Beginners hear it and think, great, I don't have to do anything. Then their garden becomes a weed-choked mess, and they decide the whole system is a fraud. Fukuoka did not mean abandon your garden. He meant stop making unnecessary, destructive interventions. His method required intense daily observation, precise timing, and encyclopedic knowledge of how the local ecosystem behaved through every season. It was an engagement with nature, not an excuse to walk away from it. Pests are not invaders. They're indicators. When your garden is hit hard by aphids or beetles or hornworms, it's almost always because something is out of balance. Weak plants in depleted soil, a monoculture broadcasting a chemical signal, a garden scraped clean of the beneficial insects and habitat that would have managed the problem before it became a problem. The Japanese approach says, fix the balance. Build your soil so your plants are genuinely strong. Use aromatic companions to hide vulnerable crops inside a wall of chemical interference. Trap pests mechanically in winter when they're dormant. Mask your plants with wood vinegar so pests fly past them in search of easier targets. And let the beneficials, the wasps, the lacewings, the beetles do the heavy lifting, because they will if you stop killing them. You stop fighting the garden and you start managing it the way it was always supposed to be managed. You build the conditions. The system does the rest. That's not folklore. That's not mysticism. That's the biology of a garden that has been designed, layer by layer, to take care of itself. If any of this changes how you're planning your garden next season, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you want more deep dives like this into traditional growing methods that actually hold up under modern science, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.